Psalm 1, verses 1 to the end. Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. Not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked leads to destruction.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's Sunday again, and I want to share some thoughts from Psalm 1, which hopefully you've had a chance to listen to and perhaps reflect on a little bit. It's a wonderful psalm. It's the first psalm, of course, Psalm 1. And for a lot of people, it's no coincidence that Psalm 1 is the first of the Psalms. Psalms is, in some ways, the hymn book of the Old Testament, 150 Psalms, and it was Israel's songbook. But the Psalms are not arranged as our hymn books are in alphabetical order. So Psalm 1's not there because it's the first letter of the alphabet, and that's why it goes there. They're arranged. Well, the strong suspicion is arranged theologically, if you like. So Psalm 1 sets the tone for the rest of the book of Psalms. It kind of is the foundation. It's the doorway through which you enter into the world of Psalms and all their rich variety and all their expression and all their emotion. And it's a wonderful psalm, but it's an unsettling psalm because of its simplicity and its straightforwardness. It's obviously not a long psalm. It's just the 6 verses. But it lays before you a choice between 2 pathways, 2 ways of life. There's the way of the righteous and the way of the wicked. And that's it. And you choose. And happy are those who do not follow the way of the wicked. And instead their life is blessed. They are like trees planted by streams of water. They yield their fruit in season. Their leaves do not wither. In all they do, they prosper. There isn't a third option. There isn't a middle way. There isn't any ambiguity here. And that presents us immediately with a struggle, I think, when we read a psalm like this, because if only life was that straightforward, and if only life was straightforward in the choices that we make at any given turn, we would know exactly what the right thing to do is and what the wrong thing to do is. There are times when it's obvious. Shall I do something incredibly blow up my neighbour's house because they're making too much noise in the middle of lockdown? Well, no, that's not a difficult decision to make. Shall I run away with my best friend's wife? No, that's not a difficult decision to make. Shall I sell my children into slavery? Tempting as that might be on occasions, that's not a tricky decision to make. But so often the decisions that we have to make, those kind of what would Jesus do sorts of decisions about what should a Christian do at a time like this, are not always straightforward and easy decisions to make. The way of the righteous is not always that obvious, in contrast to the way of the wicked. I was in a meeting earlier today with some Baptist ministers reflecting on the impact of the virus and the pandemic and the lockdown on church life, and someone introduced the sort of the big picture, as it were, by saying that there's this feeling that creation itself has kind of said enough, stop, and brought the earth to a standstill, if you like, so that creation can breathe. That even in the midst of the pain and the death all around us of the virus, there is a sense, and many of us are commenting on it and feeling it. The air feels cleaner, the sky seems brighter, And we've seen those wonderful pictures of suddenly animals straying into urban spaces, and just aspects of creation seem to be enjoying this break from human busyness and human activity, and the incessant flying of aeroplanes through the sky and all of those sorts of things. And many people, not everyone by a long way, but many people are discovering that perhaps life and well-being are found in a slower, more simpler pace of life, that the busyness of life, that all that necessity to commute and whiz around and work incredibly long hours, it turns out perhaps we don't need to do all of those things in quite the same way. And perhaps one of the things that we will embrace as we come out of this is a less active lifestyle. But we're in the moment. You can feel the tension building around us as the pressure to lift the lockdown and get the economy going, and politicians trying to wrestle with it. And that's not an easy decision at all. It's a very hard decision. But you begin to wonder. There's no doubt that our economy, as somebody said in the meeting this morning, has tanked. I mean, it's just the implications for our economy, for unemployment, for all of those things is serious and real. And as Christians, we can't ignore that. And yet, somewhere in between the balance of creation and life, and creation being creation, and the economy and the need for the economy, that there is something of, if you like, the whiff of death about it, the smell of death about it. And the person who was leading the seminar this morning suggested that maybe God is saying to us in all of this, of all the things that we are trying to discern, what God might be saying is, you can't have both. You can have creation and life and well-being, or you can have a highly charged economy with lots and lots of profit and high returns on your stocks and shares and dividends, and profit margins and high interest returns, but you can't have both. Because I think we've been made to see that that actually to place the economy at the center of all things, to place profit at the center of all things, only leads to death, to the destruction of life, to the loss of well-being. And one of the great outrages, I think, for a number of us, that we're increasingly becoming aware that while millions and millions of people are losing their jobs, there's a small group of billionaires who have made extraordinary profit out of this pandemic, that their value, their personal value, has gone through the roof, as if it wasn't possible for them to earn any more. And the amount that they've made, if you like it, during this time would have paid the wages of these out of work people comfortably. We've always known that in the time of crisis, in the time of war, there are always those who profit from these things. That actually, the greed that fueled their desire and their business approach while times were good doesn't suddenly vanish in a time of pandemic. That they set themselves up, if you like, as the gods of this world. They promise great riches and to solve all the problems, and yet it is fueled by power. They have more money than could be spent in a lifetime, and it's no longer to do with money. It's to do with power and control, and to achieve some kind of other status that's beyond ordinary human experience, to feel like you have a godlike power in this world. Psalm 1 presents us with a stark choice. There's the way of the righteous or the way of the wicked. And And the simplicity of its choice is often overlooked because of that word wicked. And when we think of wicked, most of us will think of people who beat their wives or abuse children or kill puppies or commit acts of genocide on nations. They're the wicked people, the murderers and the rapists and the abusers. But first of all, we need to see, first of all, who are the righteous? The righteous are those who delight in the law of the Lord, and on God's law they meditate day and night. So the righteous are simply those who live lives where God is at the center, who immerse themselves in the ways of God, in the teachings of God, in the Torah, the law. That would have been how the readers of this psalm would have seen this. That the Torah was not so much a kind of self-righteous legalism, a tick box of rules to Daddy be pleased with me because I've kept all the rules this week. But the Torah was given so that Israel would have life, and life in all its fullness, words that would appear on the lips of Jesus when he walked on earth. I came to give them life, and life in all its fullness. He was the embodiment of the law of Israel. So these are the righteous. These are the ones whose promise is this blessed life. Happy are those. Blessed are those. It's a beatitude. It's a blessing upon these people. And so the wicked are not those. In other words, the wicked are those who choose to live their lives without God at the center of their lives. They choose to live their lives selfishly and autonomously from God, disconnected from God. They don't see any need for God in their lives. In fact, Flannery O'Connor, wonderful American writer, Catholic writer, she wrote a book called A Good Man is Hard to Find, and she has a character in the book called Misfit. And Misfit is asked why he does not pray, and Misfit's answer is quite profound. He replies, "I don't want no help," he said. "I'm doing all right by myself. I'm doing all right by myself." So to be wicked is not to pray, because I'm doing all right by myself is to believe that life is to be lived independently of God, and to not need God in any way. And Psalm 1 brings us to that place. And that place of choice. I'd always wanted, part of the reason for doing these Psalms was to help us to pray through this time of pandemic. Whether some of us have found we've got more time to pray, or perhaps it's less easy to find time to pray, but nevertheless to pray. And this Psalm, first of all, reminds us that when we pray, we make a choice. And in praying, that there is that choice, that we choose in the act of prayer to acknowledge that our lives are not to be lived independently of God, that they are to be lived with God at the center of our lives. That Karl Barth said, to clasp our hands in prayer is to declare an uprising against the disorder of this world, is to declare an uprising against the wickedness of this world that says it can exist apart from God, it can run itself apart from God, that life can be found apart from God, that all those millionaires and billionaires and corporations and principalities and powers that promise life apart from God are the very stuff of wickedness. And so to pray out of Psalm 1 is to choose to once again acknowledge in those moments of pause, and when we say our prayers, is to acknowledge that God is at the center of all of human life. And again, we invite him and recognize that he is at the center of our lives. So first of all, to pray from Psalm 1 is to pray to choose. Secondly, it's also to open space for confession, to recognize that in the stark simplicity that the psalm presents to us, the way of righteousness and the way of wickedness, we don't always get it right. And that we choose, come again, to confess our weakness and our need of God, to acknowledge that we need his Spirit to come and orientate us again that we might place him once again in the center of our lives, so that the choices we make instinctively will flow out of our immersion in his life and our love for his word, and all that Scripture teaches us how we should be. So to pray out of Psalm 1 is to make a choice, to put God at the center, is to confess that we don't always get it right and we need his help. And thirdly, is an expression of outrage against the disorder of this world, against those who would set themselves up as false gods, who would set themselves up as those who would entice the likes of, Misfit, to believe it is possible to live life apart from God, that we can do all right by ourselves, and somewhere in that choice, life is to be found. It is an act of outrage against those who are driven by a desire to believe that they can put the worlds to right, and God is no longer required. And so Psalm 1 brings us to the very heart of our faith, the very start of the journey that we begin through Psalms. It's the door we enter. And blessed are those who choose to put God at the center of all things and to find their peace with him. So may the Lord bless you today, and may you too be like a tree planted by streams of water, and may you yield your fruit in its season, and may your leaves never wither, and may everything you do prosper, because the Lord is with you. Amen.